Welcome everyone to Flyover Footy on the Big 550 KTRS. My name is Matt Baker, and if you're joining us on the radio, happy Friday night to you. And if you're tuning in to us on the audio pod or on YouTube, we thank you for joining us to talk all things City and to preview the LA Galaxy match, 3:30 p.m. kickoff this Saturday. On this show, I'll be starting us off with a look at both teams with a little bit of a deeper dive into St. Louis before bringing in my good friend Edgar Zuniga from News Across the Galaxy, a pod that a lot of folks might be familiar with now. We've had some crossover shows this past week where you're literally crossing streams, as I was a guest on his pod earlier this week to offer a St. Louis perspective. So if you want a little bit more to preview this match, give News Across the Galaxy a download and check it out on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts. Before we pull in Edgar, though, let's take a look at both of these teams, some news, notes, player availability updates, and dive a little into the latest on St. Louis City SC. These two teams are no stranger to each other. City is 2-0-3 with 2 wins and 3 draws against the LA Galaxy, with their most recent win being the memorable 3-0 win on March 8th at Dignity Health Sports Park in Carson, California. In that match, goals were scored by Cedric Toyshirt, Marcel Hartl, and Simon Betcher. The Galaxy have had a very difficult season. They have borderline been the laughingstock of the entire league. And Edgar will go into the nitty-gritty, the big picture stories, but let's get you caught up into where the Galaxy are in the standings right now in MLS. They are 15th in the West out of 15 teams with a 1-12-4 record. That's 1 win, 12 losses, and 4 draws. 7 points in 17 matches with 15 goals scored, 36 goals against, and a minus 21 goal differential. Their away record as they come to Energizer Park is 0-7-2, 0 wins, 7 losses, 2 draws. Their last 3 matches, though, they've tried to turn things around a little bit. We're going to go into this RSL match, but their most recent match was a 2-0 win against Real Salt Lake on May 31st. So this is a team that hasn't played in a few weeks, but their last match was a win. Before that, they had a couple losses in some low-scoring matches, 1-0 at San Jose, 2-1 against San Diego. We'll get into their recent form more with Edgar here in a little bit, including what's been going so wrong with the Galaxy and a lot of the trends that they've had throughout the season, player availability issues, coming off of the cup, salary cap issues. We go deep into that. So stay tuned rather, to the back half of our show for that. Health and availability update for the Galaxy. If there's one thing that the Galaxy really have going for them, it is that they are mostly a healthy team. But the one player that they're missing for sure is Riqui Puig. They're number 10, the midfield maestro who pulls all the strings, connects their lines, delivers service into their box, and it is more than arguable that without Riqui Puig, this Galaxy team is a shell of its former self. Inability to deliver service into the final third. You have guys like Gabriel Peck and Joseph Paintsil, who have all the talent in the world, but they have nobody to deliver service. And a lot of this goes back to the injury to Riqui Puig and the fact that the Galaxy can't replace him necessarily because of how much they've invested into him. He is still out from his surgery prior to MLS Cup from last season and isn't expected back until mid-July. So there's a long-standing desire to get Riqui Puig back in the lineup for Galaxy fans. They may be without Marco Royce. We will know as the injury report comes out on late Friday night, but the last time they played was Real Salt Lake. The last time Marco Royce came off the field was against Real Salt Lake with a potential hamstring injury. Edgar goes a little bit into more detail on this, but he's had a couple weeks to recover now. So we're thinking he should be okay. Roman Berkey even referenced on Thursday's press conference his desire and excitement to play against Marco Royce again, his old friend from Dortmund. Some of the storylines that the Galaxy were following for them, their roster, like I mentioned, was decimated in the offseason as a result of the salary cap restrictions. Key pieces like Marco Delgado, Dejan Joveljic, Jalen Neal, and more have departed the Galaxy, leaving them with gaping holes in various parts of their lineup. Edgar's going to give us some more insight into this as well. They've had a lack of that midfield connectivity that I mentioned without Riqui Puig out, so they haven't been able to get the ball into their dangerous players and put them into good positions for goal scoring. And on that goal scoring, it has been abysmal. The goal scoring has been bad, but the defense has been absolutely atrocious. They are tied with DC United for the most goals allowed in MLS this year while being at the bottom of the Western Conference. And finally, they ended their 16-match winless streak with that 2-0 win that I mentioned over RSL on May 31st, their last match. So the question is, will they be carrying momentum into the game against St. Louis? Will there be rust? Or will they fall back into their old ways from their first 16 matches? The Galaxy are kind of at a pivot point here and a crucial inflection point of sorts because this offers them an opportunity where they have some gaps in their schedule between the last game and this one. And then there's kind of a bigger Club World Cup type break that MLS is going to experience after this weekend's match. So the Galaxy kind of need to pick up momentum where they can as they gear up for that later run. Now on the St. Louis side, 14th in the West, 3-9-5 record, 14 points. So we're 7 points above the Galaxy, but still pretty far down from the rest of the conference. 14 goals scored, 23 goals allowed, -9 goal differential, and a 2-3-3 home record. But as we said on last week's show, a lot of that comes from Olaf Melberg. So we take a lot of that with a grain of salt in the bigger picture stats. Hone it in, look at what we've done under caretaker manager David Critchley, and it's a 1-1 record. The last few matches are that 2-1 loss against Portland last week, where the stories are heat, depth, and that second half collapse, where you basically saw two St. Louis teams play, one in the first half, one to start the second half. That was kind of the same. And then you saw whatever happened after the 50th minute mark, where Marcel Hartl told us they felt they had that it was fate that they were going to concede. So you have these storylines from St. Louis from this Portland game. But before that, it was ending the streak of their own, that 12-match winless streak with the 2-1 win against San Jose. And then before that, it was Olaf Melberg's last match, the 1-0 loss away to Colorado that ended his tenure. Now, trends for St. Louis are overall positive. You know, we're trying to trend in a better direction under David Critchley, and that starts from the players. We've heard, if you count it up over the past couple of weeks, from guys like Akil Watts, Marcel Hartl, Jay Reed, Klaus, Roman Berkey, and others that have talked about how much better things are. Go back and listen to the Thursday press conferences, because Roman Berkey talks, almost waxes poetic a little bit about how much better things are right now under David Critchley, how much it's an enjoyable atmosphere and experience to be there. He's getting more involved. Berkey mentioned in Thursday's press conference their ability to play out of the back with his distribution is actually being emphasized now. And that's something that's not only exciting for Roman Berkey, but it's exciting for St. Louis City fans, the back line, and really everybody who has a vested interest in this team. David Critchley has referenced this week Roman Berkey as the deepest player in the attack and the build, and our front line as the first defenders against the ball, almost resetting the expectations back to what they used to be, where you have a ball handling goalkeeper who can be a third defender of sorts when you're having your two center backs deep, like we talked about on Fallout, but also re-emphasizing the importance of the front line leading the attack, leading the off the ball movement in defense as well. Now, taking leads has been a welcome change under David Critchley. That's happened in both the matches that he's coached, but City's also lost the lead in both of those matches. Versus San Jose, they regained it late, and at Portland, they lost it late. So while this team is getting back to basics, the identity is starting to come back into form, and then the players are very much more comfortable in playing, it seems. It's not all sunshine and rainbows right now regarding their ability to dictate the pace of play, to hold on to leads, and to see games out. Their success in the field tilt and other areas of focus like PPDA from David Critchley are obvious points that he wants to emphasize as critical aspects in order to kind of prove that you're getting back into the style of play that St. Louis does. It's matching the eye test with the data, and that's something David Critchley has time and time again over the past few weeks shown that he wants to do. Now, on the St. Louis side, for health and availability, barring any late week changes, because as we record this on Thursdays, we all know the Friday issues that might happen for St. Louis. So we'll just knock on wood and say we don't want that to happen. But as we know it right now, the following players will be out for this week against the Galaxy: Rasmus Alm with his hip, Joachim Nilsson with his knee, Edu Leuven with his hamstring, Chris Durkin with his knee, and Henry Kessler, I believe that's a hamstring as well. So 5 players, 5 crucial players, but overall a similar group from last week. Henry Kessler being the one player who's out this week, who wasn't out last week. But we do have good news. From last week, the players who are in are Jonas Horn, Conrad Wallem, and Cedric Teuchert. Cedric Teuchert and Jonas Horn missed due to injuries, or at least not being fit, held out. Conrad Wallem missed because he was suspended due to a red card, a yellow card, multiple yellow cards in the last match, the match prior. So we're getting those 3 players back. We're getting Jonas Horn back, bolstering up our defense. We're getting Conrad Wallem back, which provides that extra depth in the midfield. And we're getting Cedric Teuchert back, which provides depth up top and could potentially act as a replacement of sorts from last week where Brendan McSorley came in. So there's a lot of excitement in that regard, even if we're still missing these absolutely crucial players like Edu Leuven, Chris Durkin, and Henry Kessler. Now, storylines that we're following for St. Louis. Energizer Park as a fortress. The notion that David Critchley knows what the fans want to see. They want to put on a show. They want to be exciting, play exciting soccer for the fans was emphasized early on before the San Jose game. Can't forget that. That's something that he's obviously taking into it. He mentioned, I think, on Thursday's press conference, too, the desire to play for the fans, to get everybody up, out of their seats, edge of their seats, excitement type of a thing. St. Louis hasn't had that at Energizer Park, and they're 1-0 at home under David Critchley, so we hope to see that keep going. And against the Galaxy, it's probably one of the better chances of making that happen. We also, like I said, have better depth from last week with Conrad Wallem, Giannis Horn, and Cedric Toyshirt returning, and only Henry Kessler is the player not available now who played last week. The focus on pinning the defense into their defensive half with greater than 50% field tilt. David Critchley's mentioned field tilt multiple times. And what this means when passing the eye test, basically, is not just having more possession of the ball, but having more possession in meaningful areas of the field. It's limiting the final third work by the opposition. And so where you're pinned back into your own zone, your own defensive third, it's limiting the amount of time and the amount of passes that occur in the final third defensively, but also playing with numbers in the opposition half and being aggressive when the ball is lost by counterpressing and regaining possession when they lose it in the areas that can be dangerous in to create chances quickly. Now, one of the things under Olaf Melberg that we've talked about a lot is the fact that he had numbers in the defensive half. And he was playing very much defensive-minded soccer. And when you create these counterattacking opportunities or these fast breaks, you were never at a numerical advantage. This is a key piece of what David Critchley is trying to implement for this team, is to create that numerical advantage in the attacking half, passing the ball around more, just existing more in the attacking half. And by sheer virtue of the volume of passes, the amount of time you're spending over there, that will change the field tilt. That's what he's talking about when we say field tilt. It's getting the ball and having possession or having the work in that dangerous part of the field. That tilts the field to your advantage. Now, the characteristics for these two teams, looking at the strengths and weaknesses, we've talked about St. Louis's, their shooting from direct free kicks has been a strength this season. When Edu Leuven's on the field, we still need to see more from Marcel Hartl. I feel Marcel Hartl hasn't had the same success. Fans are kind of getting a little anxious with missing Edu Leuven when it comes to these free kicks. So while a lot of people think of St. Louis City as a strong free kick taking team, whether it's from corners or those earned via fouls, without Edu Leuven, I don't know how much of a strength that really is. So we need to see a little bit more dynamic workings off the ball as well. So not just the person who's taking the free kicks in the corners and Hartl or Salio or whoever it might be, but we need better work off the ball to create the space for that ball to be delivered properly. St. Louis has had issues in defending set pieces, defending against individually skilled players throughout. So there is going to be a spotlight on really high quality players like Joseph Paintsil and Gabriel Peck. Paintsil had burned us in years past. And so this is an opportunity to shut down some of these Galaxy really legendary type players. They're high value players, the DPs that they've signed and brought in. That's going to be a key piece, is how will our fullbacks defend against these wingers? The Galaxy love to get into that attacking wing and invert in and really play the numbers with Peck and with Paintsil. So how will our left back, how will our right back manage this? Because in the previous games, they were higher up the field. So you're changing how your positioning is by St. Louis. And it's not like the Galaxy are going to be coming out in a wing back style with three center backs. I fully expect them to be in a 4-2-3-1 like they've been over the past few weeks, few months. But it's the value of those attacking players out wide that can come in and they can create a little bit of chaos when you have those fullbacks handing off the responsibilities to the center backs. And it's the spacing that's going to need worked on, especially with Henry Kessler out of this game. Defensively, I think St. Louis still will have their hands full, even if this Galaxy team hasn't shown an ability to get the ball to guys like Peck and Paintsil and Miguel Berry in the attack. We can't take them too lightly because the skill is still there. Now, the Galaxy on their side, they've been really poor in finishing scoring chances. I'll talk about those stats in just a minute. But they've been also poor at defending against attacks down the wings and defending against long shots. Now, Chris Durkin's not going to play, so we don't have his long shot capability, but Akil Watts might play. And he's shown a propensity to have those long shots as well. So you might have some shots outside the box that may have an opportunity because the Galaxy have allowed a few of those goals so far this season. Defending against attacks down the wings is going to be absolutely key for our fullbacks. You get Thomas Totland down wide, you get Giannis Horn or Jay Reed on that left side. They push high and they create the numbers advantage in the attacking half, and it starts from those wing areas. Wherever you decide to send the ball and have your attack build, either side now has quality. With Thomas Totland back on that right side, Giannis Horn and Jay Reed on the left, a lot of opportunities. So the Galaxy have also been pretty poor in aerial duels and protecting the lead. So St. Louis has opportunities to come out strong in this one. And I mentioned on Edgar's show that coming out strong is an absolute necessity for St. Louis in this match. The Galaxy haven't just been bad at protecting leads, but they've been bad at giving up goals early. And at home, this is absolutely vital for St. Louis to get on the board early, creating that mindset and that climate of putting the Galaxy on their back heels and making them defend. That'll help tilt the field in an advantage for David Critchley's side as well. The Galaxy like to attack down the right side with that Joseph Paintsil. They like to take long shots. They like to have short passes, play with width, and they will use all of their subs likely. So the Galaxy are coming into this game, like I said, usually playing a 4-2-3-1, but using those wide attackers. And when you get into the stats, looking at how just analytically does that match the Galaxy's really poor table performance? And the answer is yes. The Galaxy have generated the 4th lowest expected goals in Major League Soccer and are tied for 4th fewest goals scored. Bad at generating, bad at finishing. In comparison, St. Louis has the 10th lowest XG, so 6 spots higher than the Galaxy, but they have the 3rd fewest goals scored, which is less than the Galaxy. So it's a pretty good indication that both teams are below average in goal scoring, but that the underlying numbers do favor St. Louis on what's being created, with St. Louis being second to last in the goals minus expected goals, and the Galaxy being 21st in MLS. So the Galaxy are actually finishing what they're expected to finish based on what they create. St. Louis is still massively underperforming what they finish compared to what they are expected to finish or expected to score, even if that's still on the low end. In the quest for field tilt, this is a St. Louis team that has outperformed their average possession of 44.2% in both of David Critchley's first 2 matches. St. Louis is tied for second to last in overall possession. They don't hold the ball. Under Olaf Melberg, they just did not care for the ball. They couldn't. They were unable to keep possession of the ball. The LA Galaxy, on the other hand, through all of their issues, still have the 10th most average possession at 51.7%. And to this end, the field tilt battle is the one that Critchley may be up against a wall on based on how these two teams have performed so far. Looking at the final third numbers this season, which drive a lot of those field tilt metrics, St. Louis is second to last in passes into the final third, 7th to last in passes into the penalty area, 3rd to last in carries into the final third, and 4th to last in carries into the penalty area. David Critchley has inherited a team that has failed dismally in creating positive field tilt, but he has noted in team metrics recently improvement. San Jose, Portland, he's referenced improvement from previous matches in these past couple of games. And so the data points that he uses are going to be important for his team to be more successful in, because the Galaxy are potentially ripe for a Critchley-led team to find success here, where they failed badly under Olaf and have been improving lately. The Galaxy are far from elite in controlling field tilt regularly. So they are able to be exposed in some of these areas by some of these teams. The Galaxy are 7th in passes into the final third, 14th in passes into the penalty area, 16th in carries into the final third, and 13th in carries into the penalty area. And there's 30 teams in MLS for reference on these. So about middle of the pack when it comes to a lot of these field tilt metrics, controlling the ball, playing the ball, passing the ball around in the final third areas and in the penalty areas. So looking for who we expect to start. As we pivot away from the stats, we get into our projected starting 11, our projected goals. It's just going to be me offering my projection. For the rest of us, for Phil, Santi, and Stu, you're going to have to check our social media on Saturday morning as we post our consensus projected lineup. I have some theories, some possibilities in where David Critchley might go from here. I think my projected starting 11 is going to look like Roman Berkey, Giannis Horn, Timo Baumgartel, Kyle Hebert, and Thomas Totland as our defenders. Our midfield will be Conrad Wallem and Akil Watts. And then our attacking group is Celio Pompeu, Marcel Hartl, Cedric Teuchert, and Klaus. Now, a few of the caveats and a few of the possibilities that could be at play in this are Cedric Teuchert may not be ready to start yet. If he's not, it's a Simon Betcher start, 1-1. Get him in there. It worked well at the beginning of the game. It can work well again. The tactics were sound from what David Critchley was telling us. In the midfield, Tomas Ostrak or Alfredo Morales could start for Akil Watts, but last match, if Akil Watts did enough to earn a start over somebody like Tomas Ostrak, his performance in that game last week didn't do anything to quell that or didn't do anything to lose that nod. So I don't see why you'd move out Akil Watts in this spot because both Leuven and Durkin are out. You could look at Morales and Conrad Wallem. That's fair. But based on last game, I don't see any reason to think that it's not Akil Watts over Tomas Ostrak, at least for right now. Now, here's the other fun part that could happen. Jay Reed has started both games under David Critchley. Jay Reed could start at left back, and then you bring in Giannis Horn as that left center back in the 2 center back look. It puts a lot of pressure on Giannis Horn, and he's not, admittedly, I think, well versed at a left center back in a 2 center back role. He's more of a left center back in a 3, able to play out wide, being able to not having to cover so much space. But it's possible. If you've really liked what you saw from Jay Reed, then the answer to getting both Reed and Horn in the starting lineup is Reed at the left back spot, Giannis Horn just inside left center back with Timo Baumgartel. That keeps Kyle Hebert off the field, and you still have Thomas Totland on the right side. Giannis Horn might not be able to go yet. If he's not fully healthy, he may not start. So the answer may be moot, and you just have Jay Reed out there with Baumgartel, Hebert, and Totland. I think that goes through just about all the potentialities that I believe are possible with this starting 11 for David Critchley. Vegas sees us as the favorites. We are at plus 100 with the draw at plus 250 and the Galaxy at plus 275. So if you bet on this game, St. Louis is favored in Vegas. And I'm sticking with my same projection, a 3-1 St. Louis win that I had on Edgar's show a couple days ago. So I think this is a game that St. Louis can win, should win, and has to win. There's really no two ways about it. If you're not going to be able to win at home against the worst team in MLS, who has half as many points as you, and we know how poor we've been at accumulating points, who can you beat? And the Galaxy aren't in the most perfect form just because they have one win out of 17 games, and that win came in their last match. It was 2 weeks ago. They don't have a different lineup. They don't have different health and availability than they did in that game. So this is a winnable game. It needs to be a winnable game for St. Louis. Now, before I get into the interview with Edgar and his take on the Galaxy, I do want to address one quick question that I received on social media from our friend Abo, because we're not doing a wind down tonight. It's a little bit of a different flow in the show. He asked more on the summer transfer window. And so a little quick aside on my take on that before I kick it over to my discussion with Edgar and we wind down that back half of the show looking at the LA Galaxy. His question: could you discuss fan expectations for the summer transfer window, who you think may leave, what positions we may target, and do you think Lutz will have a war chest? First question, my fan expectations for the summer transfer window: you should expect a new signing, at least one. Lutz has said time and time again, the summer window is the window of preference to act in because more players are available, and by more players available, he usually means European players, admittedly. But in the bigger leagues in the world, you have more contracts expiring, more players are available, the options are greater. And so a better volume, a higher ceiling of player, it should be expected that we sign at least somebody, one player at the very least, if not more. We have some roster space now. I'm not, like I said before, Jabulu Blom, Selmer Pedro, not on the table. Nick V. Thorsen's been sold. So there is options available for Lutz. On the who you think may leave, and actually really quick, I'll talk about the positions in a second. That's another question. Who I think may leave. For me, who may leave, you just need to look at the club roster profile. Look at whose contracts are expiring at the end of this year, especially our high value players who are not injured, that we may be able to sell for a profit as opposed to just letting them walk. Now, the key here is everybody has options. So the question isn't necessarily going to be whose contract is up. It's whose contract is Lutz not planning on renewing necessarily. That's a little bit of a trickier question to answer because looking at the club roster profile, you see contracts that end in 25, but players have an option for for 26. You're looking at Klaus, Chris Durkin, Henry Kessler, Jean de Silva, Rasmus Alm, Jabulu Blom, who I mentioned he's not coming back, Alfredo Morales, Selmer Pedro, his contract's expiring, so we might try to sell him. And then Conrad Wallem is on loan, but we're not doing anything with Conrad Wallem. Our supplemental roster is basically going to entirely turn over at the end of this year. You have Christian Oliveras, Jay Reed, Akil Watts, Michael Wenzel, Josh Yarrow, Joey Zielinski, and then Miguel Perez from our homegrowns, whose all their contracts are up in 2025, but they all have options. So it's all of those names that I just mentioned. You could see them, any of them moving if Lutz has no desire to re-sign them. And he's already thinking about who he wants to re-sign, that the wheels are in motion months and months and months in advance for these kinds of things. So that's what I have at the top of my mind is, as far as outgoing players, is who is Lutz not wanting to let go on a free when he knows he could get some value. I mean, think about Tim Parker last year. We know the hubbub behind that, the drama as it played out on MLS's Onside documentary with Tim Parker leaving and the circumstances surrounding that. It was to get value from him. It was to be able to bring in Henry Kessler and to have that continuity. So looking at that kind of thing with some of these players who they may have options, but they may be expensive to pick up. As much as it kills me to say it, Chris Durkin is a candidate for this for me. His option will take him out of the U22 range. And so we pick up his option, his salary goes up to, I think it was around 500,000. That's over a 100% increase in his price. It's not to say that they may already have a desire or ability to keep him on that option. I don't know. It's just something that stands out because it changes the salary cap situation so much. The only players that we have under contract right now through 2025 with no options are Roman Berkey, Selmer Pedro, and Ben Lunt. So our goalkeeping core could turn over. Maybe we do try to sell Ben Lunt and get some value for him if he's not our long-term answer. One thing that has to be said at this point, because Roman Berkey's contract is obviously a conversation that is always being had. Negotiations are underway. They've been underway as far as trying to re-sign him or making offers and agents talking, all of that. So the club and player and the players' representatives are conversing. Lutz Pfannenstiel also said earlier this year, very point blank, and you could go back to previous episodes earlier this year or check my social media. He said Roman Berkey will be with us for the entire year. And that to me quelled any idea of selling him in the summer. Things could change. Obviously, every match between now and July, and we're out of the playoffs, and Berkey's upset. All of a sudden, things change from where they are drastically. Yeah, things could change, and we could make a move. But as of right now, there is no reason to think that previous comment by Lutz Pfannenstiel won't still hold. And so you look at Roman Berkey staying for the season, and now you have Ben Lunt, with the decision being, is he going to be a player that we want to replace Roman Berkey as potentially our starting keeper? Or do we maybe get some value from him this summer and we say we expect Berkey to be healthy? Maybe we run with Christian Oliveras as our backup keeper. There's a lot of different things at play. But to me, the selling thing all comes back to contract years and able to get the most value for a player. You could also look at players who aren't starting. Maybe they're starting to be disgruntled. That's been another thing that we've made moves based on players who were either disgruntled or had issues off the field. Notable last season, I'm not going to name names, but I think it's pretty obvious who we sold last season around the same time that Bradley Carnell left or just before. That's what I'm talking about in that case. The last thing, what positions we may target. To me, it's center mid and it's an attacker. Whether you say a wide attacker or an out-and-out number 9, I don't care as much. We can make things work as we need to. Klaus hasn't been performing as a goal scorer, so we need a goal scoring number 9, in my opinion, if Klaus isn't going to be counted on to be that person. And at some point, you got to look at somebody's body of work when it comes to evaluating what your upcoming needs are, as opposed to what their potential is or what they had done for you 2 years ago, being a double-digit goal scorer. So either an attacking winger, an attacking forward, and I'm talking DP level at that point. You need not a Jean de Silva type player where you're getting a good value for a player that really wasn't desired by his team. I'm talking about maybe a player who's out of contract, but has a proven track record, or a U22. We have 2 U22 slots open. We have the ability to go back to the DP roster construction model. The possibilities are quite literally endless as far as what we could do. But to that last question, do we think Lutz will have a war chest? Nothing's really given me a warm and fuzzy the fact that he would have a war chest. I don't see the checkbook should be opened compared to what it was. Yes. And I think continuing to spend more and more, but maybe even bring players in on loan, like a Conrad Wallum. I don't think we would have been able to afford Conrad Wallum if we would have tried to sign him. I think the loan was what made that work. And I think there could be that possibility too, is sign a player on loan for the rest of the season, sign him on loan for a year with an option, whatever that may be. A loan very much could be in play to get a high value target for the next 6 months to a year. And I'm going to wrap up my segment by saying I hope you enjoy the game on Saturday. It's a 3:30 kickoff, early start time. Pack the park, be loud, support the boys. And I hope you enjoy my interview with Edgar Zuniga from News Across the Galaxy as we preview and finish our preview of the LA Galaxy. Enjoy the game this weekend. Thanks for tuning in, everybody. Appreciate you, and we'll talk to you later. All right, Matt Baker back with Flyover Footy. I'm joined by Edgar Zuniga from News Across the Galaxy. And if you've paid attention to any of my social media over the past, a week or so, you know Edgar. I was a guest on his show last week on a wooden spoon special, unfortunately, where we all got together, kind of commiserated on our poor luck this season. I think it was Montreal, Atlanta, St. Louis, and LA. So welcome in, Edgar. Thank you so much for joining us on Flyover Footy to help preview this match against the LA Galaxy.
No, thank you so much for having me on here. When I was thinking about the idea of the Wooden Spoon Collective, I was kind of thinking about it kind of like the Yellow Submarine, right? Where you have like the four Beatles, trying to figure out how to save the world, right? And their Yellow Submarine. And that was us right there, like last week, right? Trying to figure things out and get rid of the blue meanies.
That's kind of all we can do right now, right? Bottom two in the West, at least. Forget Montreal and forget Atlanta for right now. It's just us. 3:30 p.m. Central on Saturday. It's kind of funny how MLS has given us one of the featured matches between two of the teams that are struggling the most, but each one of our teams has some exciting things going for it. I would say, you guys. We'll talk about the win you're coming off of here in just a little bit, but Edgar, we love to talk about soccer. We are a soccer podcast. Both of us have soccer podcasts, but we're also not blind to everything going on in the outside world. You can't turn on the TV. You can't open social media without hearing about the issues going on in Los Angeles, the ICE raids and roundups that are occurring. We don't bring politics hardly ever into Flyover Footy, but this seems like too perfect of a moment where you're almost in the middle of it all in LA. So I want to give you an opportunity to just express what's going on from your perspective. What are you seeing? And talk to our viewers about what's going on in LA.
Yeah, it's really difficult to actually talk about, but I'll try to shed some light on it. So in case people are trying to figure out what's going on, because in this world of social media that's muddled by so many bots and so much misdirection, it's very difficult to get a true idea of what's going on at the ground itself, the ground level. But we've heard about how the powers that be at the White House, want to have mass deportations, according to them, of bad hombres, of criminals. And if that's the case, then go ahead, round up the criminals. But when the attention starts to go towards hardworking taxpayers that aren't necessarily illegal immigrants, but some of them are going through the process of becoming naturalized residents. I mean, becoming legal residents and then naturalized citizens, and they're being targeted when they show up to court hearings for their cases or for their process. That's hard. And then you start hearing other stuff, how the ICE raids go directly into restaurants. They targeted a Chinese restaurant. They took away some Chinese immigrants that were in there. They went to a high school that was in the middle having their graduation ceremony, and the students were held inside the school by the school staff and let out little by little so they could try to avoid being dragged into this mess. You start hearing about how even at elementary schools, little children are being taken away. Little kids. I mean, what the hell did they do that was wrong? They're kids. They don't understand what's going on. So whatever message was supposed to be put out there, it's completely lost. And of course, LA being LA, the people here are not going to just sit there and like let it happen. The people stood up and they let their voice heard. This is a massive population out here in LA County. We have like close to 30 million people that live within the county, and you have a lot of people coming together in certain pockets of the city, and they're protesting. And um, gives the powers that be like a opportunity to try to take attention from some other issues that are going on right now, and they use this as to say, hey, look, these people are doing some horrible heinous things out there in LA, and next thing you know, We have military troops showing up, and everything's just gotten out of hand. And it's difficult because now we're hearing about how U.S. citizens are being targeted as well, and it's a situation where I'm carrying my U.S. passport around, but even I don't know if that's going to help me because like I said, we heard about a case where there was three people in a car. They got rammed into by an unmarked vehicle. People came out and threw gas canisters at them and then dragged them away, and nobody knows where they are right now. And they were all U.S. citizens. So take that as you will. It's been hard. It's affected our local footy community. LAFC put out a statement, in solidarity with
Mhm.
with their supporters, with the city of LA. We're still waiting to hear anything from LA Galaxy. I don't expect anything. I'm not going to hold my breath because we know, who the ownership is, and they have a history of doing stuff like this in the past. Um, but in general, the footballing community here has come together. Galaxy LAFC fans, everybody is saying, "Hey, look out for each other. Uh, don't do anything stupid to try to, escalate things, and just remember to look out for each other because it's not just affecting people that, might have been the initial target. Now it's affecting the general population." Galaxy fans have canceled trips, away trips to San Jose, which
Mhm.
is as an annual tradition. They've canceled watch parties, and it makes me wonder how things would be if Galaxy had a match during July at home, but we don't have any. We're not going to have a match here. I'm sorry, during the month of June, we're not going to have a match until Independence Day. So that's going to be interesting. But for now, yeah, it's a very strange, tenuous situation here in LA. Don't believe that everybody's rioting and setting the whole city on fire. That's not the case. It's just in certain pockets, people are protesting vehemently against what's been going on, and it's very easy to turn that into something a lot more heinous.
And I'm glad that we have the opportunity for you to be able to speak on this. It's a unique opportunity in the landscape of who we're playing and who we get to talk to, and just it falling right now. I think we would be doing a disservice if we didn't at least take advantage of this opportunity to create awareness and to give a perspective that I don't think anybody in St. Louis has or will have or could have, because we see things unfold on social media. We see things unfold on the news, and tying it back, I'm so glad you tied it back into soccer and how it's directly affecting the supporter group activities, the fan safety, and how everybody feels gathering for events related to soccer, something that should be celebrated. So thank you so much for your feedback and your perspective on that. And I want to switch us back into soccer full on, because this is the second match of the season that these two teams have played each other. The first match is probably the only match that St. Louis City fans really feel strongly about in a positive way in this entire season. 18 games in for St. Louis. We look back on that Galaxy game saying, oh, if we could only replicate that game over and over. And I know you've had this really unfortunate losing streak, or winless streak rather, throughout the season. In fact, the Galaxy just won their first game on May 31st against RSL, and we're going to talk about that in a minute. But I wonder if you can kind of give a little background to the Galaxy season. So they are 1-12-4 with 15 goals scored, 36 goals against, minus 21 goal differential, winless on the road. I don't mean to add insult to injury, but just context of, for our listeners and viewers, how you guys are doing. So we'll talk about recent form and RSL in just a minute, but talk to us about this season so far for the Galaxy in any way you want to take it. Players, front office, head coach. What has it been like watching this team, and how have you seen them evolve of sorts throughout the year?
It's been an absolute nightmare. It's unheard of. It for somebody like me who's been there since the very beginning. I've never seen anything like this. I know that the 1997 team had a rough start.
Mm.
They turned things around. They let the original manager Lothar Osiander with the LA Galaxy way back in '96. Team had a rough start in '97. They let him go. They brought in oh my God, I can't remember his name right now. They brought in another manager, and he turned things around. The team made the playoffs and set them up pretty good from then for the next several years. But they were quick to address that way back in '97. This time around, it's so weird. You just came off winning an MLS Cup, and you still have that nice, warm feeling.
Mhm.
And then they start having some bad results. and you're like, yeah, we're okay, we're gravy. We have several injuries to key players. Galaxy had to give up several players due to salary cap constraints, and so we saw that there's no more Dejan Jovalic. Mark Delgado went to LAFC. We got Gaston Brugman went to Nashville SC. Jalen Neal, a youngster, ended up going to CF Montreal, and so on and so on. So there were several private players that were missing. So we look at the front office. They're like, okay, how are you gonna reload? Well, who are you gonna bring in? Because the the core of the team is still there. And although Ricky Puig is missing, obviously, I forgot to mention him, right?
Hmm.
He had a season-ending injury, obviously, right before MLS Cup, serious enough that he merited surgery, and he's not going to be available until sometime mid to late July.
Mm.
So Ricky Puig is out of the equation. And you look, oh, you still have Marco Royce, you still have Diego Fagundes, Edwin Surreal. These are players that were very important to the MLS Cup run. We have fantastic win backs in Mickey Yamanen, of course, our boy, um, John Rock Nelson, right, Nelly, and
Still
so you're
kicking
like,
there on that left side.
yeah, we love him, man. And then he has an understudy called Julian Aude, who's from the Argentinian league, who's almost he's like a different side. He offers a different kind of aspect. So you're like, this team should be pretty good. This should be okay. But um, you mentioned something when you were on our show where you're like, you create chances, right?
Hmm.
And you get there into that final third, and you look at the XG, and you're like, well, you know, there should be some goals that are coming from this XG because you're creating so much for chaos in that final third. But for one reason or other, the goals just did not materialize. They just don't happen. Sometimes it's because players were just not playing in sync. Because we lost the Anya Village, we had to see what we could get. And Miguel Berry, who was there from last year, is not it. He's really slow.
Mm.
And he's not the kind of player that you could count on for 90 minutes. He's more of like a plug and play player, like towards the end, and he'll give you like a little bit of boost, right? A big body to throw into the box. So Galaxy brought in Christian Ramirez, uh, who, yeah, he in the past he's proven he can score some goals, but he's not who he was before, and he's really slow as well. And when you have wingers like Gabriel Peck and Joseph Pinto, who are like road runners running up the sides, they'll run up the sides, and then they look to the middle and there's nobody there, or like Christian Ramirez is huffing and puffing to get back in the position. And by that point, two or three defenders have come out, and limited their opportunities, and you either pass the ball around or they get displaced. So all this is happening. And the defense, oh my God, the defense is such a mess with the LA Galaxy. Captain Maya Yoshida, who won his first domestic title with LA Galaxy last season.
Mm.
He's a veteran, he's former captain, multiple time captain of the Japanese national team in the World Cup. He's our captain as well, and there was an issue with him at the end of the season because he was a free agent. Galaxy signed him back, but to a lesser contract, and he
Mm.
came on. He actually spoke to the LA Times, spoke to Kevin Baxter, and he said he dropped a lot of F bombs. He was really upset. He's like, I've never been in a league where you win the championship and you're not rewarded, financially, and
Yeah.
instead you have to take a pay cut. And he said the only reason I am not left the city, practically, I'm paraphrasing at this point, is because my daughter is in school now, and
Mm.
she's comfortable where she is, and I don't want to take her away from this. So he's like, I'm gonna just have to stay here. Marco Royce came out in a video that I'm pretty sure is still on social media, where he
Yeah.
was criticizing the same thing, MLS. He was saying, what is this? I'm sure you've seen it,
Hmm.
Matt. Maybe some of your viewers have seen it as well. So you have this, right, coming into the season. You have this maelstrom of new players that are obviously gone, and then you have like these players, that this dark cloud hanging over some of the players, and it just came together in this very dark, murky cauldron that has been the 2025 season. But then you keep thinking, hey, at some point they're gonna figure it out. They're gonna find a way to win. There's no way they're gonna lose all the games. Our good friend Josh Guessman, who covers Galaxy through Color of the Galaxy, that's one of the things he kept saying on every week's episode. He's like, there's no way. There's no way they can lose every game. There's no way. But week in and week out, we see them lose or get draws or give up points, and you're like, how many ways can you lose, Matt? Right? And then this was the one that broke me because it was this one week where they had to play against Kansas City, Red Bull, and then Philly. So they go to Kansas City, and Galaxy
Mhm.
puts in one of their best defensive efforts of the
Yeah.
season. They don't just keep Kansas City from getting a shot on goal. We're talking they don't allow a single shot at all,
Yep.
right? And this is Dejan Joveljic right there playing for them. Well, Galaxy lost that game because Mayashita scored a banger of an own goal, and Kansas City made history. And so
We
you're
t-
like, what the?
we we talked about that one on our show about following from the KC side. We're obviously curious what they're doing, and for them to pull out a game, pull out a win without having recorded a shot. I mean, do you just laugh at that, at how silly that is, or how do you respond to that?
It's funny because like there's like a you have that little MLS sicko at the window that's
Yeah.
watching it. They're going and going ha ha ha, right? And he's all like, I secretly hope this happens just because I want to see what happens. It's like I want to see the wheels fall off this thing and just have a chuckle about it, right? But
What else are you
obviously,
supposed to do?
you look at it, you're like, damn, this is pretty bad. Considering Kansas City came in pretty bad state as well. Then you're like, okay, rematch, MLS Cup rematch against Red Bull. Galaxy just did a great defensive thing here in Kansas City. How are they going to rebound against the Eastern Conference champions? We called it the Red Wedding, which
Oh,
I'm sure they have their own Red Wedding when they beat the hell out of the Pigeons at Yankee Stadium. But this was our Red Wedding
yeah.
because this was the worst loss in Galaxy history. Um, I haven't seen a performance that dominating, that lopsided by a team since I saw LA Galaxy destroy FC Dallas 8-1 in 1998.
Mm.
That look it up. It happened. It was pretty bad. In that same season, the Galaxy beat them also 7-4. So
Jeez.
yeah. But anyway, I digress. Yeah, no, that was horrible, especially because at the end, the game ended with another own goal to make it 7-0. So at that point, you're like, dear God, we went from one extreme to the other. We got completely destroyed. Um, well, we have Philly in this next match, and we had our good buddy Jimmy King come on the show to preview that match for Philly. And he was having his doubts about Philadelphia Union. He was like, I think you guys are primed for a win because Philly's having some issues at this point. And I said, I have no expectations at all. I'm kind of disappointed with the team. Let's see what happens. Well, Galaxy takes a 2-0 lead into the half. Everybody's
Yep.
like, all right, this is it, boys. This is it. 5 minutes into the second half, they cough up the lead. It's 2-2. And I remember, I think I posted on our MLS fan media chat room,
Yep.
Matt, where I said, please, dear God, don't let these guys lose at the death. And what ended up happening, they gave up the winning goal at the death. And at that point, I was like, I'm done. I'm
Yeah.
done, man. And yeah,
And both of that, so those stretch of games happened at the beginning of May. So for context to St. Louis fans, the Galaxy had taken, I think, 10-game winless streak into that Sporting KC match on May 3rd. They had the loss where they didn't allow a shot. They gave up 7. Then they gave up a halftime 2-goal lead and in the dying minutes of the game. And they continued on with what was the winless streak? Did it end at 16? I think. Right.
well, they ended up losing the next match too, I think.
Yeah, there was LAFC, San Diego, and San Jose, where there was a tie against LAFC and El
Yeah.
Trafico. And then you guys
Oh
lost
yeah.
2 in a row after that before you finally found a win.
Yeah, the match against LFC was really strange because we had an LFC podcaster on, and he was saying um, the same thing that I've heard from every LFC podcaster, which is like you can't predict these matches because there's been times when Galaxy has been bad
Mm-hmm.
and they've given LAFC some issues. There's been times when LAFC has had their issues and they come in and they beat Galaxy. So it goes both ways. And he said, I really think we're gonna lose this one. And I'm like, well, I don't know, man. And by golly, Galaxy tried very hard to lose that match, but they ended up with the draw, which was seen as a huge positive. And then they go to San Diego. There's a kerfuffle in the stands
Yeah.
at the end of which was another match where Galaxy lost at the death. Very ugly way to lose the game, considering there were a lot of defensive miscues as well. And so then San Jose comes into town, and they're in really bad shape. And they're also lost and trying to figure out things out. And Galaxy loses to them again. And at that point, you're like, okay, we're the Walking Dead. And then RSL comes into town. And I looked at RSL, and this is where you said we're going to look at RSL's their current run of form. RSL, my God, since beating Galaxy way back in April 5th, and one of the worst games Galaxy played this season, among all the worst games they played, right? They
Hmm.
played it really ugly. They played a stinker up in Salt Lake City.
Yep.
And Galaxy lost that game. But since that game in April, RSL's only won one other match, and then
Yeah.
when they beat San Diego, and since then it's just been an absolute like hall of horrors for them.
Kind of shows the parity that RSL in that run beats San Diego. San Diego beats you guys. You guys beat RSL all in the past like month or two. So all teams, San Diego's even had their run, but you guys, San Diego, or you guys, RSL, St. Louis stepping into the mix. Bad runs of form overall. But I mean, that kind of speaks to any given Saturday, right? That you
Yeah.
could have all of the underlying analytics, the metrics that we love to talk about on our show that are going against you for so long. It only takes one match for all of those things, or enough of those things to go right, where you take a lead into halftime and you don't concede somehow at the end of the game. I mean, these freak things that happen where I talked earlier on the show before I brought you in about some of the analytics and some of the data and the tactical viewpoint. But you get into it, and if you can just sustain these leads, we just had a match where we were up 1-0 after 50 minutes and we gave it away. You know, you've had those matches this season, so you feel like you have the talent, and I feel like the Galaxy have the talent to be able to turn this around. Is that too rosy of a view of this?
Oh my goodness. I think it got to the point where everybody looks at League's Cup and they're like, well, um, we don't like League's Cup. Let me be honest. Most Galaxy fans, especially the older fans, and they're like, we don't like League's Cup.
Hmm.
We like U.S. Open Cup. We love the history of the tournament, and how it ties. It's a thread that ties together like all the eras of football, soccer in this nation of ours, right?
Yep.
And so to us, at least to me, right, and other people that I know, it's very important. And to not have Galaxy in that tournament to me it's very sad.
Yeah.
So, but then we look at League's Cup and we're like, well, there's an opportunity to not only get some silverware, but it's a shot to get into the Champions Cup,
Yeah.
CONCACAF Champions Cup. So, and a lot of people are like looking at that, and then you hear the comment from Sasha Clayton, where he's all like, I'll shave my mustache and shave my hair and paint it blonde or whatever if Galaxy makes the playoffs." And all of a sudden, LA Galaxy fans are like, you know what? I hope they put it up in a bulletin board inside the dressing room. Let's go, boys. Let's make this guy shave his head off, and let's make it happen. But this was all mentioned after the match against RSL, which was a 2-0 win for Galaxy.
Mhm.
But it's on the surface, you're like, oh, it's a very solid win. Galaxy got a clean sheet. Well, when you start to look at the statistics, RSL had 19 shots. I mean, obviously they weren't all on goal, but
Sure.
Galaxy gave up 19 shots to the game, and Novak Mikovic, who was the goalkeeper for that match, had to like make several big saves, especially at the very beginning of the match. RSL had opportunity to take the lead in the first 5 minutes, and it caught the defense completely flat-footed because it was against the run and play. And Mikovic came on, and he made a kick save, kind of like a ice hockey goalie, like
Yeah.
kick save, and everybody at first was like, "Whoa, that could have been really bad," and but it kind of shows also how snake bitten RSL is right now, because they had so many chances to score. There are opportunities where they had where the goalkeeper wasn't even in position, open goal mouth, and they just completely missed, or they missed just by inches to the left, to the right. There were like at least two shots. They went off the crossbar. One went off the post. So they're going through their issues. There's a lot of pressure on Diego Luna, uh, and I could explain. I could take real quick, just a few seconds to give some perspective on what happened with RSL. I'm not going to get into the nitty gritty because it gets very sordid. But apparently, Diego Luna was set to take a big step for one of the biggest teams in Liga MX at the end of last season. But a certain player that was with RSL was also involved in some extracurricular activities. Um, and the league, I mean, the team took notice. There were some demands that were made, and the team ended up having to send him to San Jose. And so
Not
RSL's
hard to
like,
connect dots on this one.
no, and RSL's like, we can't just let Luna go. We're really sorry. I know we know you deserve this, but we can't let you go. So we're gonna have to ask you to stay. And Diego Luna is there by himself now, where if you talk to RSL fans or even our good friend Alex Nopolis from RSL, he says,
Mhm.
RSL would have been set up pretty good if things, if things had remained just the way that they had planned it. But obviously, everything got flipped upside down for them. So what a mess for them. But it worked to our advantage. Galaxy got the 2-0 win. It took some pressure off what's been such a horrible, bizarro world season for us. And the fact that it came right before this 2 week break gives everybody an opportunity to kind of come back in this match against RSL with a different perspective, not having that monkey on your back that's
Yeah.
been just hollering at them the entire season, and try to see if they can turn that win against RSL into a result against a St. Louis team that, from our conversation, is also looking to get things going in the same direction. So at this point, let's see what happens.
Well, and that's a good point, though, that the Galaxy are well rested or maybe too rested because you had a weekend off. The last match you played was May 31st against RSL. And so it's the opposite a little bit of what St. Louis is doing, where St. Louis comes into this match after the Galaxy. We will have a weekend break. We won't have another match for 11 days after that. So do you feel there's any rust that will be coming from the Galaxy? And on that note, too, talk to us about some of the strengths that this team has, because we've talked plenty about the issues, the lack of goal scoring, the XG issues, health throughout. Ricky Puig obviously not being available is a massive blow, but let's look at what the Galaxy do offer that St. Louis fans should be taking note of as you guys come in.
Yeah, to answer the first half of your question, I think that the rest was very much needed because Galaxy played a ton of matches
Mm-hmm.
in May. I think that this schedule was so lopsided, so loaded in May because the league is trying to squeeze in Leagues Cup, which, like I said, I really don't like Leagues Cup. Right, I just
Yeah.
think it's not needed. I'd rather have the Open Cup where the matches are sprinkled across the fixture scheduling, and instead we have this tournament in the middle, and then you also have the Club World Cup this month, and so there's a lot going on. And Galaxy was forced to play a lot of matches. We knew when we saw the schedule, we knew like they were going to have to run the gauntlet in May, but we never expected it to be this horrible. The fact that they actually got a result at the very end was a huge positive. So um, take the break. I know Marco Roche. He suffered an injury against San Jose. Some people said it was like it could have been it looked bad, but because they were saying it was a hamstring or his calf or his thigh, or something to do with his leg, a lower body injury. If you're a
Yeah.
hockey fan, one of those, right? Uh, to me, I was in the stadium. I saw him just kind of sitting there, and I thought to myself, he looks like he's meant out, checked out mentally. He looks like I'm done, man. I'm done. And so at that point, I'm like, okay, I think he needs a break. He needs like a little break to just to sit, and relax and retool. And we're expecting him to come back with a fresh mindset. Now, you asked about some of the strengths of this team. Well, I mean, I don't know where to begin. I mean, because the midfield hasn't been as solid as we had hoped. The defense has been an absolute mess. The goalkeeping is like middling at best. We have, like I said, two goalkeepers, John McCarthy and Novak Mikovic, who had been switching starts. We have two other goalkeepers that we haven't seen even a shadow of, and but these two have been going back and forth. They're nowhere near what Roman Berkey is. And so whenever we see Roman Berkey, we're like, damn, I wish we had somebody like that because it would make such a big difference on his club. Um, and then you look at the attack, at the forwards, and you're like, well, you have the two wingers and Peck and then Paint. So obviously these are DP level players who give you a DP level efforts. But they've been struggling to get service the entire season. They don't have somebody who's distributing the ball to them and on runs. Galaxy is a team that likes to use that speed on the flanks to try to catch teams and then cut the corner and create some of that chaos in the box. We haven't been able to really see much of that this season. And a lot of it has to do because the midfield has been so much in flux, and there's been so many people, so many names that have been thrust in and out of different roles and situations that there hasn't been like a real solid lineup where you could count on every week, week in and week out, like we did last season. And then on top of that, like I said, at forward, they were swapping between Miguel Berry and Christian Ramirez, and but all along, Galaxy had this youngster they came on loan from Botafogo named Mateus Nascimento, and everybody was wondering where is this guy because he started the season on the disabled list, and then you could see him come in here and there, and then we saw him play against Red Bull in that horrible match, and he showed a lot of hunger. He showed some dynamicism we haven't seen in a while. And then in the last two matches where he has played, we have seen the offense actually show sparks of life. And he was very instrumental in the victory against RSL. And we really think that this kid is going to have a very good second half of the season. Lucas Sanabria is another name I want to bring up. He's a guy that was brought in from Uruguay. He used to play for Club Nacional over there, highly touted by Club Nacional. A lot of people saw him as a stopgap for Ricky Puig while Ricky Puig was recovering, somebody who could also play CDM and be a presence in that midfield along with Marco Royce. Second week of the season, second match against Vancouver, he took a hard foul, fractured collarbone. He was out for a while. When he came back, he still was having issues kind of fitting in. Coach Vanny spoke about it, saying that he's actually a very shy kid and that now he's starting to come around. Now he's getting used to it. And that's going to we're seeing a better performance from him. And I think that's also one of the factors that went into that win against RSL. So yeah, that's one of the strengths of the team is that I think is that kid, Mateus Nascimento, Lucas Sanabria is starting to find his role within the team. The defense is still kind of a mess, but I feel like if they took this break and found out a way to come together after having gone through such a difficult time in the month of May, it's kind of like when you're a blacksmith and you're like pounding on that sword and it looks like a mess at first, and then eventually all that friction, all that pounding makes it into a very dangerous weapon. And I'm hoping that's what happens with them. To use that metaphor, because I mean, there's got to be something to come from all this pressure, right? Pressure makes diamonds, right?
Yep.
We've heard that before.
That's what they say. Well, let's wrap this up with who you expect. So let's really quick injury report, and then we'll get a score prediction, and then I'll get you out of here. Outside of Ricky Puig, is there anybody noteworthy that we know of that's out for the Galaxy?
Nope, not really. The only one is might be questionable. We haven't seen anything since the match against RSL. Maybe Marco Royce, but I expect him to be ready to go in that match. Not sure if he'll start, but he'll definitely should be there on the bench if not.
And I'm sure we're looking forward to the Marco Royce, Roman Berkey storyline rekindling a little bit. Old friends from Dortmund. At one point, Marco Royce, for St. Louis fans, I'm sure we all remember the rumors of us trying to woo Royce before he sought the sunny skies out in LA. Score prediction, Edgar. What do you think? What are you expecting? What are you hoping? Or what do you think is realistic for the Galaxy in this one?
To draw. I mean, my hope, realistically, I think St. Louis will win 2-1.
2-1. I like a little bit of an optimistic perspective. I said on your show 3-1. I'm going to go 3-1 again. Edgar, you got to get out of here. I'm going to let you go. Thank you so much for joining us. Plug your socials so everybody knows where to find you and your fantastic Galaxy coverage.
Thank you so much, man, for having me on. I've had great experiences with all the city supporters. Everybody's been so nice, so kind. And you guys can follow me for not just for Galaxy stuff, but for MLS. I also talk about the U.S. national team every now and then.
Yep.
And other stuff here and there. I'm a big Whovian. You might see me post about Doctor Who once in a while. I have my artist right back here. But yeah, you guys can find me at Edgar Nags, like it says right there. You also find me on Blue Sky as Edgar Nags, and also on Instagram, where I have content that's a little bit different. I have interviews with different fans from around the league, and I even have some interviews with some city supporters in there as well.
Nice. Edgar Zuniga from News Across the Galaxy, and your son for joining us late in the episode. So if you've heard his son, that's fantastic. He's joined us, and we love it so much. Edgar, thank you for joining us on Flyover Footy to help preview the LA Galaxy game against St. Louis City. Again, 3:30 p.m. this Saturday at Energizer Park. We look forward to the matchup. Always look forward to talking with you, Edgar. Thanks for joining us tonight, and we will talk to you later. All right, for Edgar, my name is Matt Baker. Thank you so much for joining us on Flyover Footy. We appreciate you watching and listening and tuning in. Hit that like and subscribe button if you can, if you haven't already. We'll be back again after the match to do our fallout. Enjoy the match at Energizer Park or watching on MLS Season Pass. And as always, go City.